working on mobile juggernaut, Plants vs. Zombies, and its move into the HD team-based shooter space. I'm going to distill 20 years of experience working on products and with companies into what goes into building an eternal brand, right? And something that is going to stand the test of time, something that will outlive us all. So you're probably expecting Coke, right? But I didn't work on Coke. I did work on Pepsi and a bunch of other billion-dollar brands when I got my first real job in the industry, or working in any real enterprise industry, where I learned about 5 MBAs worth of knowledge on brand image, brand values, brand positioning, brand projection, and far too much stuff on detergent market segmentation. So from that, I learned 2 very important things. Firstly, I needed a new job, right? One, working on stuff that I thought was really cool, preferably in the gaming industry, and so that's what I did. The second thing is, I'm a retention marketer. I'm drawn to retention products. I want to work on something that's going to be around for a long time. And so I asked myself a simple question as a retention marketer. How long do we want our players, right? It's a bit of a flippant question. It's hard to measure progress, but yes, the answer is forever. But I prefer this premise. I think it's a bit better. More lifetime value for more players for longer. Because value goes both ways, right? For the player and for us. It's measurable, it's aspirational, and it's a powerful lens to think about live service and retention. So as a retention marketer, you're drawn to sort of long-term thinking. Right? You want to be working on stuff that's going to be around for a long time. And so that is why brands are so important to you. Right? You want to decode what works. So I've discerned 4 pillars that are essential for building an eternal brand. And I'm going to relate that to you by my experience on garden warfare. So what goes on with building an eternal brand? So let's have a think. How about PvZ? It's a mobile juggernaut, right? How important is PvZ to mobile gaming? Well, Apple has a room dedicated to PvZ in its headquarters. That's how important it is. Moving a game franchise into a new genre is a great way of sort of testing its long-term appeal. What PopCat did is, the creators of Plants vs. Zombies, is they took their lane-based tower defense game and they moved it into the team-based HD shooter space. Crazy, right? It's never been done before, never been done since. But boy, did it work. Over 8 million players of a premium product before the 2016 release of the sequel. So, when you're dealing with big endeavors like building a brand, you sort of need to have a special kind of work value, and that gets me onto my first pillar, right? Brain trusts. Pixar calls these brain trusts, right? A special group of people who work together to deeply understand a brand. And Disney knows something about brand longevity. Star Wars, right? A brain trust years in the making, triumphantly being led by Kathleen Kennedy. But it's got DNA that it is decades old. People like John Knowles and Ben Burt, right? Really important connective tissue. So with PvZ, we had our own brand family. Lorian's smiling. So people like Jeremy Van Hooser, creative director for the whole franchise, Gary Clay, marketing director, Owen Johnson, brand manager, off camera, Brian Linley, senior producer, and Justin Webb, creative director for Garden Warfare itself. And there was a whole host of other supremely talented people who worked on this project, making the magic happen. Now, you may think that market analysis and cohort targeting and cross-promotional activity is the most difficult and important thing when extending a game franchise. And these things are all really important, but it turns out almost every team has access to people like this. Almost every team. When it comes to building a brand with longevity, well, it's a little bit harder. That's why there aren't many of them. And you need a deeply realized IP to do that. And you need people to help you with that, right? And that's the second pillar. And you need that because you need people to answer questions like, are there girl zombies, or are they just in drag? Right? How long have zombies been around? What is Zomboss's master plan? So, again, you need people. You need people to figure that out, to codify it. Now, you can either do that by documentation or by having living, breathing tomes of knowledge. When I worked at Games Workshop, these were people like legendary artist John Blanche and games designers Jervis Johnson and Rick Priestley. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, we've got a really deeply realized IP, but I'll set this challenge to you. Because Coke, has set the bar really, really high, right? Yes, a sugary drink company basically owns Christmas. So, in fact, I think we all owe Coke some money now for even thinking about Christmas, right? Because brands like Coke have figured out what works, what fits, and what doesn't. So let me take you on a thought process. When we were working on Garden Warfare, we had to figure out lots of little details. Questions like, do zombies carry guns? Now, at Wargaming, we're pretty friendly. We're okay with guns, okay? We are big fans of big tanks with big guns. Guns and tanks, tanks, guns, shooty tanks, okay? At Games Workshop, it was all about gigantic war machines, terrifying weapons of mass destruction, because in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Now, with Garden Warfare, we're making a shooter, right? You've got guns and shooters, right? Right? So you can forgive the team for their sort of first attempt at getting it right, but it wasn't on brand, right? It fell short. So the Brain Trust family at PvZ encouraged creativity, more comedy, and less real-world lethality. And you need a deeply realized IP with a Brain Trust family to answer questions like this, and it is a good answer. The dolphin gun. In the grand tradition of PvZ, we heavily weaponized a dolphin. So, and we did that with all of the zombie classes. We came up with creative answers to their weapons. This is the zombie scientist, the marine biologist. That is his armament there, the dolphin gun. It worked. It was on brand in that sort of joyful, magical way that gets people talking about it. This is an actual quote from Rock, Paper, Shotgun, right? And this is just part of a whole article about them losing it over that dolphin gun. One of many. And our players loved it too, right? So, our third pillar, community ownership, customer ownership. When we talk with our players, we strive for clarity. We strive for consistency and constancy. The perceptions and experiences our players have shape the long-term value of our games, and we would like to shape that conversation. Listening to our players can help turn good into great. And of course our players want to talk to us about the games that they love, their aspirations for it. Of course they do. What a glorious problem to have. So I like this slide because it sums up the real value of community and customer ownership, right? Because they're a key ingredient in your brand. Their love of what we do is vital. So with Garden Warfare, we had a long-standing community request. Can we play as zombies? We said yes, because it made perfect sense with this iteration of the property, a team-based shooter. They couldn't quite believe that we were sincere about this to start with, so we had to make a sort of zombie class breakout video, and it sort of went along the lines of this. That's a zombie foot soldier. There are his abilities. That's a paint gun. You can play as this zombie. They loved it, right? Because it filled a desire, a need they had to connect with our product and brand. Now with Garden Warfare 2, we knew what the community wanted in some areas, right? And so we really drove the game in those areas. And then we took informed creative risks in other areas, features and characters. Like the Z-Mech here, a hilarious nod to Titanfall, which hit that wonderful sweet spot between dev creativity and player love of parody and crossover. We were very careful that we didn't replace features that players love with ones they hadn't asked for. So I'm going to go back. Clicky, clicky, click, click, click. So hype is a risky business because you have to deliver. We were careful not to invite any comparison we couldn't deliver on. So, the final pillar, mastering representation. Okay, so Blizzard sets the gold standard here, right? Their evolution of Warcraft from RTS to MMO to CCG is immensely impressive. Like I said, it's the gold standard. We at Wargaming like saying gold, okay? They've mastered representing their game year after year, okay? And I like to think that they have taken their lead from some of the most iconic brands out there. Star Wars, did you like the swipe there? Star Wars, redefining the offer and the joy decade after decade, generation after generation. But I have to say, if they killed Chewbacca or Luke Skywalker in the new Star Wars movie, I will write a strongly worded tweet to Rian Johnson. So, fingers crossed there. So 1987, what a year, right? Metal Gear was released. Without the Solid, just Metal Gear, right? It was the first one. Final Fantasy, the first one was released. RoboCop and Predator were in the cinema. But perhaps most importantly to me, Warhammer 40,000 was released. And the world changed. For me anyway, and probably a few people in the audience. Games Workshop have masterfully built on this iconic universe. For 30 years, they have deepened and built upon this iconic setting. Space Marines have never been more iconic in this, the 8th edition of their landmark game. With Garden Warfare 2, the sequel, we deepen the experience. We move the story forward. Zombies were winning. The plants were on the counter-assault. And we took this all back to PvZ's mobile roots, pun intended, right? With PvZ Heroes, we crossed over characters from Garden Warfare. And we extended the franchise in ways that people really wanted. And we did it joyfully. So, I submit to you what I have seen work firsthand. It's long-term thinking. It's value-adding. It's about people, special group of people, sort of a brain trust family who are deeply connected to their customers, their players, right, and the brands that they shepherd. So, they say, end your presentation on a quote. This is a pretty good one, but I can do better than that. I'm going to end mine on Batman. Perhaps the ultimate symbol of entertainment brand, representation, and longevity. So let's just take, on his computer game output alone, he would be legendary. But let's just take one game, the 2007 Lego Batman game. It has sold over 13 million copies. Just that one game. And there are dozens of others going back all the way, almost 30 years now into the 80s, right? That's excluding the movies, the TV shows, the merchandise, and yes, the comics, right? He is the dream, the aspiration, okay? So, if you want to live in the house that Batman built, or one like it, you need these 4 pillars standing. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Rowland. So now we are ready for our Q&A session. So guys, please, you're welcome to ask questions. Is everything clear?
I think you have implied this, but I just want to get clarity on this. If your IP is initially too shallow to be fully deeply realized, is your suggestion then either could move on to another one or find out a way to actually broaden and deepen that IP?
So I think that's a discovery, isn't it, right? So Bob Kane did not think that Batman was going to be around 78 years later, and, you know, almost 24 games and almost a dozen movies and blah, blah, blah. So I don't think you can decide a brand, right? Because you need customers to sort of adopt it. So everybody comes out sort of with a product. And products are fine. People need products. They're profitable, right? So brands are sort of that thing that takes off and everybody can feel that. So you can do things, and Disney is very good at designing brands, but they'll drop it if it looks like a product. Right? So, and that's about community, that's about ownership of the community, right? So you can do everything you can have the right people in place, you can look at that IP, and it doesn't have to be deep to start with. Like, Coke has built an IP as impressive as any game, right? They own Christmas and polar bears. So you can build upon that, but you have to put it out there for it to be a brand. Right, and then you can grow it. So that would be my take on that. And so it depends how commercially successful it is and how beloved it is, right? Then you can move it into being a brand.
First of all, thank you for your masterful presentation. I wanted to ask you about cross-branding. Cross-branding, an intersection of brands. For example, World of Tanks Blitz right now are about to bring some tanks from Warhammer 40,000.
Which is awesome, by the way. Let's all take a moment to clap that.
I completely agree with you here. I am also a Warhammer fan, so I got you. But what do you think about the whole idea? Does it undermine the base brand? Or on the other way, does it strengthen it? I don't know. What would you say?
It depends what our players think, is my answer to that. So I think it's really exciting, and I am a player of Blitz. I really like the mobile experience of World of Tanks. So I'm really looking forward to it as a player And I would say if our community takes to it, then it's won. So if they like it, it's great. And I don't think we should take risks like that. It's an informed, good, creative risk. And it's a good, from a sort of high level, it's very, it makes sense, right? They're simpatico in some ways, the brands and the customer base. So if our players love it, it's a great idea. If they don't, then we move on, right? And hopefully they do love it.
Hi there. When we're talking about extending a brand, this is sort of the rules of the game. But I'm wondering, does the actual platform of apparel, that you deploy to the actual technology, changing format, for instance, from a mobile game to, let's say, a console game or a PC game, does the actual format play into that, and do you have to strategically pick that? Or is that something that you just have to test the waters on because you're jumping formats, moving, let's say, from a soft drink to a comic book, right? I mean, there's a gap there, and is that something that should be planned, or is that something that is just a matter of happenstance?
So it really depends on the experience you're moving, right? So let's think of some good examples. Like with World of Tanks, one of the amazing things that we did with the mobile offering is it's an actual, and I don't mean this in any derogatory way to any other game, but it's a really deep game. It feels like World of Tanks. We put World of Tanks on a phone, right? It's amazing. With PvZ, we took a mobile game and the gameplay is completely different, right? That's why it was such a brave and exciting brand extension to work on, and really needed a very dedicated and experienced Brain Trust family to help navigate that. So it really depends on the content of the experience you're moving over. Some things port really easily, and they often feel like a natural sort of, it's not even like a brand extension. It's like, why didn't it, of course you move it to that thing, it's an obvious thing to move to. Other things, yeah, it does count as a brand extension when you move it to another platform, right? Because you're bringing in new players, and we've seen that with the transition from, or transition's not fair, the growth of mobile gaming, right? So that has brought in hundreds of millions of new people who perhaps don't even think they're gamers into gaming, right? So that is a great example of a transformative platform. Right, and it's still relatively fresh. So yes, it's a complicated answer. It depends on the experience that you're porting, right, and also how different is the platform, how new is it, what's the opportunity there.
Hi there.
Hey.
Great talk. Learned a lot. Thank you very much. I'm looking at the 4 bullet points over there. Let's talk about number 3, community ownership.
Yes.
What can you do to increase community ownership in general? And then without giving away any secret stuff, what are you doing specifically for Wargaming today?
Oh.
Again, no secret stuff.
So what you can do, so listen, right? So listen. It's probably the most important thing you can do. Now, I like this analogy, which is the Christmas list. Most people understand what that sort of means. If you've put a Porsche on your Christmas list, you're probably not going to get it, right? And this works internally with development and also with our customers, right? Players sort of understand that they can't have everything that they would like because somebody has to make that. But you sort of have to manage that expectation and listen. That process is really important for connective tissue, right? Because they want to feel part of that process. There are lots of other things you can do, but I think listening and showing that you've heard and having some degree of transparency on the development process makes people feel they are part of something that is like a family, right? Even if it's an abstract one. And I believe in that sort of approach. There are other things. Disney does a great job, and they do it, and they do it in so many different nuanced ways. It's amazing, and it seems like it's easy to them. Like from the Star Wars Celebration stuff they do, where they let people touch Luke Skywalker, right? They can go and talk with him. That's really important. We do a Let's Battle tour, where the devs go out and tour, and they get to touch They get to see the Wizard of Oz, and it's very exciting for them, right? And that's, for those people, that deepens the experience tremendously. So one of the things that I'm thinking about is, you know, how do you create a new community for new properties, right? That has to target an area that perhaps, you know, is virgin territory for us, right? And that's the sort of thinking I'm doing at the moment. And I'm bringing these sort of lenses because hopefully the sort of thinking that we're doing is long term, and it is building a new, you know, a new brand experience without giving too much away.
Thank you.
Anyone else? You.
Well, talking
Why
about...
are you so scared? I'm the one standing on the stage with all of you looking at me.
Talking about Dolphin Gun. So there are a lot of games which has a lot of absurd in it, like Worms or well, PvZ again, or maybe well, this World of Tank Blitz with Warhammer tanks, which some player might find, you know, like a bit odd. So my question is how to define that line where you can call something like funny, absurd, or just, you know, stupid. And well, yeah, how you define that line when you like create games and yeah.
Okay, so let me try and figure out what that question is. Humor in games and the difference between sort of absurd humor and silly humor.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's fairly relevant to Plants vs. Zombies, because actually we had quite, and Lauren can attest to this, there was quite a lot of rules about the humor that could be in that game. We had to sort of straddle a fine line between, we sort of rated it sort of somewhere between PG and PG-13, right? So that, and we would look to companies like Pixar, who do a lot of that humor that adults get, and also might go over the heads of kids. And it's not necessarily smutty, but it has some depth to it, right? So we would try and do that as well. And so you sort of need rules for your game. Well, this is really hard stuff, right? You can't get an AI bot to do this for you, or, you know, it's really hard stuff. You need people who've got experience with these sort of properties, or have a natural talent for sort of expressing things in various shades of humor. So we were really lucky to get creative director Jeremy Van Hooser, who came from Nickelodeon, and he just had a great touch for what worked, right? What he thought was hilarious, and what was too risque, or what was off-brand, or what was too blunt. He had special rules, you know. We couldn't use fart gags very often. People kept trying to put them in, and he was the fart gag blocker. That was often his job. And we sort of embraced whimsical absurdity and parody, right? There's a lot of that. There are a lot of clever, you know, literacy gags in the game, because we had a guy, AJ Rathburn, who was very key in terms of how the game was written, and he really is on boss, right? In fact, when we would do basically Twitter Ask Me Anything to Zomboss, I would basically go to AJ and go, can you spare me an afternoon from doing your real job as being the editor-in-chief for everything to do with all of our advertising that we do, to be Zomboss, because only he could nail it 100% every time. I could do it like 90% of the time, 80% of the time, but he was funnier and always on brand, right? So again, special people, right, make all of the difference.
Thank you.
Every now and again, I wobble off the stage.
Hey, hello. Hey, thanks for the talk once again.
Hi.
A great one. I like very much how you put it, that brands are created by customers and products by companies. So my question would be, once established, right, a brand has its own impact on the product. Since brand is owned and created and owned by customers, then we don't have maybe enough ownership of this. So it kind of lives its own life. So do you think we should, and it gives us also a reason to start creating, if it's a strong brand, then we create other products under the same brand umbrella, right? So that's an obvious thing to do, just to capitalize on brand equity and build on that. So should we start thinking how our decisions with other products and maybe features, like in another question about Warhammer, should we start thinking how these features or additional products impact the whole brand? And is it becoming a portfolio level decision?
All right, that's a great thought. Okay, so let me unpack that. So you're asking about the balance between player ownership of brands and our impact on that, and then you're factoring that into a portfolio effect for brands as a whole, and you're asking, can any individual brand or product in that brand umbrella make isolated decisions, really, that might affect the whole thing? So that is a really complex answer, and I don't know if I'm qualified to give a definitive explanation, but I'll give you my take on it for sure. What I would say is the products in the World of Tanks umbrella, they have different audiences. And so I think about our audience, because they are the people that pay my wages, right? And they're the people that we want to come back year after year, decade after decade, preferably. If they accept this, I think that's great. So there's sort of a layer cake here. There's player acceptance, and then there's sort of our political acceptance of allowing certain products to do their own thing, right? And how comfortable we are with that. What decisions might need to be made to allow individual products to do that. So there could be it could be, as you say, a council of the brand that needs to go, yeah, for you that makes sense. We can see that our two brands, there's a lot of simpatico sort of characteristics. You know, the user base, there's a similar demographic there, there's a similar sensibility. We aren't against this religiously. We'll keep an eye on how it works for your game. If it works really well, we might consider it. But we know that the Blitz, Blitz has had stuff that no other game has had in it, right? So we know there is acceptance for stuff that PC World of Tanks players would go, nope. And so it's a pretty good, toe in the water for what could be acceptable. And we might just go, do you know what, for World of Tanks PC, they like realistic tanks. And that's what we should do. But Blitz, they like crazy stuff, right? And we can do that. And we've established that in World of Warships as well. We've had all sorts of crazy. We had the Star Wars homage mode at Christmas, if I remember correctly. So it really depends what you've set up that expectation. Our PC players aren't expecting that sort of weird stuff, right? So you're messing with their expectations. Blitz players, they like more crazy stuff. So, you've really got to pay attention to the details. Having hard and fast rules feels good, but is often wrong. Hello.
Thank you. Do you consider that these four pillars, there is a hierarchy of importance among them? For instance, can you imagine there'd be a conflict where pleasing the needs of your community forces you to make a decision that the brain trust thinks is important to the IP or something like this? Does one precede another?
So they're not, I would say, keeping your players engaged or happy is really important, right? Because that's where the money is coming from. However, so that's the difference between sort of product and brand thinking, right? So products are really important, and a lot of people call their products brands, and they're not, they're just products. stop calling them brands, right? Products are important, they make money, they pay the rent. Brand thinking is a bit different, and you're sort of always thinking long term. You're thinking, you know, laying those golden eggs, not necessarily killing the goose to see what's inside it, right? So you do see those, I have seen those conflicts firsthand, and what without revealing too much behind the curtain, I think that when you think about the customers and you come up with an acceptable way of presenting it to them, that is usually best. If you're in a situation where you have to effectively hurt your player base, it has to be for really good business reasons. And we've all been in situations where that may have had to happen, right? Because live service is hard, and maintaining a brand is hard. I think it's important to think about your customers, right? Long term. If you're trying to build something that's going to be around for 10, 20, 50, 100 years, you have to think, I'm keeping my players, and I want to get value from them. If you're thinking, this is a turn and burn product, it'll be dead in 3 years, then you're making different decisions, and you're probably looking at the return on investment, and you're basically going, yeah, we're going to shutter this down in 3 years' time anyway. We need to make this profitable right now, which is different thinking. It's totally valid. It's just different to sort of building something long term. Thank you. That was a good question.
Anyone else? No? Are you sure? So, okay, thank you so much, Rowland, for your wonderful, brightest presentation. Yeah, and especially for those pictures of Batman.
Hi, we're with one of our speakers who just gave his speech here. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Alex Shpilov. I'm head of gaming and esports at wiki.com. Hi.
Hi, nice to meet you. So tell us, what's your favorite video game?
Well, at this moment, my favorite game is Destiny 2. I have already spent a lot of hours in it, and it's really awesome.
It is, I gotta tell you. But this is a new game. What about the very first video game you've played? Do you remember it?
The first game was the first Quake. I played it with my dad in my childhood.
That's really great childhood memories, I guess. So tell me, how did you get to the gaming industry?
Well, I was user of some fan community about Steam and Valve games, and I began to translate some games from some news articles and so on from English to Russian, and Valve invited me to translate their games as a volunteer, and after this I became such a dedicated employee at Valve, and now I'm here.
And what do you think about 4C?
It's my second 4C. I have already visited 4C in Kiev the last year, and it's really cool. I really love it.
Well, I hope you love this one as well, and I hope you get lots of new knowledge and share the knowledge as well. Did you have any questions from the audience that you really liked?
Yeah, the audience was cool. They asked really cool questions, and I hope my speech was really useful for them.
It definitely was. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. Hi, we've got one of our speakers again and wanted to ask him some questions. Hi, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Andrei Sarafanov. I'm a senior 3D artist from Wargaming. I'm working on World of Tanks project and creating 3D models of our tanks.
Fantastic. Andrew, tell me, what's the very first game that you've played? Do you remember it?
Actually, I think it was Tetris. Yes, I was amazed by the quality of the assets. I love to play this game all the time. But later, after I saw what computer games can do, I was I've tried to move to the PC gaming, and now I'm working on huge PC titles, and I love it.
Well, that's easy. Tetris had a fantastic destruction engine for its time. Yeah. But was it your favorite game, or which one is your favorite game of all time today?
Actually, today I like to play in our game Tanks, and Tetris was more like I had nothing to play, only Tetris. And today Tanks pretty much solves all my wishes, and all I want I can find in this game. It's kind of simple, pretty fast, not very long session, and I have a lot of time to work on my own projects. So that's why I like to play the World of Tanks.
Great. What led you to the gaming industry? How did you come to this industry, to this job?
Yeah, actually, I saw interesting CG artist challenge in the internet, and I saw cool character art from different artists all over the world, and I was amazed that young guys can create such amazing art. So I decided to try this out, and I found that it's not that hard, and I can learn that stuff. And I did it as in my spare time, just like a side project from my main job. And I was noticed by Wargaming at some point, and they invited me to join their team, and now I'm doing Tanks.
That sounds like a great deal. So glad to have you in the industry. What's your favorite thing about it? Just about the game development?
Yeah, I like the diversity of this industry because it changes a lot and it has a lot of different branches all over the world, different people creating very interesting experience, and every year you need to adapt to the changes and learn new things. And it is very fast-moving industry, and I love it because you need to learn every day.
We definitely all love the industry, but there are maybe some frustrations, something that you don't like that makes you sad in the state of the gaming industry today?
Well, maybe some tools are not developed enough to meet our requirements, so we have to do too much technical work as an artist. But with every year, this issue resolves little by little. So I think it's pretty okay to work these days. So it's not a lot of problems, but a lot of fun.
I agree with you there. It definitely changes quickly. Where do you think the industry will be like in 10 years' time? Do you vision any trends?
As far as I can see, VR industry, it didn't have a good start, but it certainly takes pace. I saw a lot of good examples for artists, like software to paint in virtual reality. It works really well, and I think through the special software, VR will take its place, and at some point, most of game projects will go to VR in the future.
So you think it's going to be the next big thing for everyone, right?
Yes, of course, because it's really immersive experience, and you don't have any boundaries in VR when you use VR headset, and it slowly but surely takes its place, and I think we will be there.
Yeah, the immersion definitely improves with both VR and just the quality of graphics. But do you think the graphics are more important than the storyline, or the gameplay maybe is in the front, or a mixture of some of these?
You need to balance every aspect of your game. As an artist, I know that a lot of details are not that important. The more important the basic structure you want to show to the viewer, and you need to have like basic shapes which will be easy to read, and a narrative is a good example. If you have a good narrative, it can help you to support your characters and all your gameplay mechanics. So I think you need to balance every aspect of your game, and you will get success, achieve success.
Do you have any vision of a game that you'd like to create if you weren't restricted anyhow financially or creatively or professionally, just create anything?
Yeah, and I'm not sure about the genre, but in my spare time I want to create some universes. I'm doing it at the time, and maybe at some point I will make some game project from the assets I've created. So I'm working on it, but I'm not sure what will it be.
Well, whatever it may be, I hope it turns out well for you. But right now we're here in St. Pete. What do you think about the city?
It's my second time in the city, and weather this time is much better. And I love it because the architecture is amazing. Never saw anything like this before. And I love to visit museums. There is an artillery museum here, and I'm, as a tank artist, love to visit such exhibitions. I saw a lot of cool stuff, and we'll visit this city again in the future, for sure.
It's great that you like it, but as far as I understand, 4C is one of the primary goals of your visit. What do you think about the event?
Yeah, event was... I didn't expect that so much speakers will come in one place, and I'm amazed by the quality of the organization structure so far. So far I love it. It's a very cool conference.
Do you have a favorite question that you were asked before the start of the conference yet?
Favorite question? No, I don't have.
What would you ask yourself then? If you were interviewing yourself, what would you like to open up with? What would you ask yourself?
Well, I don't know. It's kind of hard question for me.
It's fine, but it's kind of a retrospective thing. Any presentation that you're particularly looking forward to? Which one would you like to hear?
I've met a couple interesting people here, and I will attend their presentation for sure. But there are many of them, so I will not pick any one of them.
Well, I hope you get a favorite sometime along the line, and I hope you like the event overall. Thank you very much for your participation.